what did we say last show and the show before? That free speech is really the mother of all issues, because without that, you can't talk about any other issue. You cannot converse. You cannot express what needs to be expressed. And this is a very bad sign heading into election season. We obviously know that the Biden administration was blocked by federal courts from pressuring social media companies. However, the Supreme Court has thrown the Biden administration a bit of a lifeline here, or at least given them some stall time. The Supreme Court allows the White House to continue work to combat controversial social media posts. This according to the Associated Press. The Supreme Court on Friday said it would indefinitely block a lower court order curbing Biden administration efforts to combat controversial social media posts on topics including COVID and election security. And now I have a feeling there's another issue that they may want to add to that list, an issue that they've already started censoring people left and right over, especially heading into an election year. The justices said they would hear arguments in a lawsuit filed by Louisiana, Missouri, and other parties accusing administration officials of unconstitutionally squelching conservative points of view. The new case adds to a term already heavy with social media issues. Justices Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Clarence Thomas would have rejected the emergency appeal from the Biden administration. At this time in the history of our country, what the court has done, I fear, will be seen by some as giving the government a green light to use heavy-handed tactics to skew the presentation of views on the medium that increasingly dominates the dissemination of news. That is most unfortunate, Alito wrote in dissent. White House communications staffers, the Surgeon General, the FBI, and the U.S. Cybersecurity Agency are among those who would have been affected by the order. The lawsuit said they were among those who coerced changes in online content on Facebook, X, and other media platforms. Notably, the companies themselves are not part of the litigation. A panel of 3 judges on the New Orleans-based Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals had ruled earlier that the administration had likely brought unconstitutional pressure on the media platforms. The appellate panel, said officials cannot attempt to, quote, coerce or significantly encourage changes in online content. The Justice Department said the appellate ruling and a much broader order issued by a federal judge in Louisiana that the appeals court narrowed were riddled with factual and legal mistakes. Last slide here. The Fifth Circuit erred in finding coercion by the White House Surgeon General's office and FBI because the court did not identify any threat, implicit or explicit, of adverse consequences for noncompliance. I think that's absolutely insane. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar wrote, "Indeed, the Fifth Circuit adopted a definition of coercion so lax that it deemed the FBI's action coercive simply because the FBI is a powerful law enforcement agency, and the platforms sometimes but not always remove the content if flagged. The Fifth Circuit had previously narrowed a more sweeping order during the summer from a federal judge who wanted to include even more government officials and prohibit mere encouragement of content changes." So this was not a court ruling, but they did temporarily allow, until they actually hear the case, for the Biden White House to basically continue to recommend certain censorship practices. And of course, not just the White House, FBI, Surgeon General, heading into an election year. So depending on how long it takes to actually hear this case and decide this case, we could be well into election season. In fact, we, in all likelihood, will be very far into election season before the government is instructed to stop censoring, if they are instructed to do so at all. So not final news on this front, but certainly not good news on this front.
Yeah, this is where these times are just absolutely insane. Clarence Thomas is one of the biggest criminal miscreants ever to sit on that court, and he's on the right side of this issue.
Samuel Alito not far behind him. He was bribed too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Alito, Gorsuch. I mean, These are people we don't agree with about anything. And this is what we mean when we say it's a very dicey proposition to argue that basic lesser of two evils favoring the Democrats. If you really care about speech, I don't see that. Who are the people on the court who wouldn't have even taken the case and just let the precedent stand? Now, there is the best way to interpret this, and given the makeup of the court, I'm kind of inclined to interpret it this way, that the court took it because they want to rule against the government's case. I would be very surprised if this court rules with the Biden administration on this. So if there's any good news here, there are a few rays of light here. I think post Twitter files, it would be very hard for them to try to do this in the shadows. Lord knows they contact Rumble or X, they're going to release the communication to the public almost immediately. So who they can go to with this kind of coercion now, they're limited to the people who are already behaving according to the government's wishes as it is, where we are right now. They don't need to be told. They're already on board. Facebook, right? I mean, some of these other platforms are rebelling against that regime. Is Amy Pancakes really going to side with the Biden administration on this, as you nicknamed her some time back?
Yes.
I would be surprised. I would be surprised. Roberts, I don't know. I don't see it. So I'm actually cautiously optimistic, as much as it's disappointing that they're once again being allowed to meddle this way.
Yeah, by the way, back when I gave Amy Coney Barrett her Amy Pancakes nickname, we had basically no viewers. I don't even think we were on YouTube. I gave Amy Coney Barrett the Amy Pancakes nickname because she very, very strongly reminds me of a volunteer at a church pancake breakfast. You know, Saturday morning, you show up. She would be one of the volunteers, set you up with your little styrofoam plate with the pancakes and the chocolate milk. So that's the origin of that nickname. Now that we have an audience, maybe we can get that to catch on. But the other thing I would say, I mean, yeah, I take your point. The only thing that's extra troublesome about this is that the election is coming up in November. So even if they do end up striking it down, they're buying Biden so much time with this, because this is going to be 8 or 9 months before they issue a ruling. So it's really, I mean, at earliest, you're talking about next Labor Day, which I guess is technically maybe in time for the campaign season. But you're giving them another year when it really counts. I mean, you know, when they're a lame duck, it's not as potent. If they're a lame duck, if they win, which, you know, obviously that's unlikely to happen anyway. But we've seen how brutal the censorship has been just in the past few weeks as things have gone the way they have in the Middle East. I knew that the censorship was going to get very out of control very, very quickly. And, this just gives them the green light. No, this is as bad as it's ever been. It's worse than it's ever been. I knew that. As soon as this happened, I knew that. And this just gives them the green light to go ahead and start, requesting but not coercing, which is just absurd. I mean, how absurd is that interpretation? The FBI asked nicely for you to censor your users, but, you're Facebook. You're empowered to say no. They already dragged Zuckerberg in before Congress and grilled him for hours and hours. I mean, come on. That's not intimidation. That's not coercion. I mean, that's just insane.
It's a nice social media platform you have there. It would be a shame if something would have happened to it. So perhaps on your own accord, you might remove this content. Yeah. I'm not saying you have to. It's a mere suggestion from me and the boys.
Right.
It's absolutely absurd to say that these powerful government agencies that have previously brought these CEOs before Congress and lambasted them about content moderation have no force of intimidation simply by contacting these companies with those kinds of issues. Again, I'm not usually the ray of sunshine here, but I'm going to give you another bright spot. The Republicans control Congress right now. So these companies are not as under threat of that action, at least for the time being, that they're going to get dragged in front of Congress as they were at that time.
That's true. They still are subject to pressure from the executive, though.
They are. But I think, look, if I know the Biden administration, and I'd say we do at this point, they're going to embarrass themselves. It's going to be very hard for them to do what they did before the Twitter files came out. I think they're going to overreach, and you're going to have these tech companies put it out before the public.
I hope so. We will see.
Some of them, not all of them.
Of course.
Not East Berlin over here, but some of the others.
No, not this one. Now, for sure, wouldn't count on that. We do not count on that anytime soon, unfortunately.
Please clap.